Welcome to PetAbility. I'm your host, Kathy Simons.
And I'm your host, Chris Cranston. Our podcast provides interviews and information to help your pets live their best lives.
Hey, good afternoon, Chris. How are you doing?
I am very well this fine day. What's up?
Chris, I am really excited about today's show because today we're going to be speaking with certified canine nosework instructor, Michele Ellertson, talking about the sport of canine nosework. And Chris, I will tell you that I was introduced to this sport about 7 or 8 years ago when I adopted a little blind pug named Digger. The audience probably knows I've talked about him quite a bit, in the past episodes. And when we got him, he was completely blind, and he had been through, his foster home, and then he was adopted by us. And our goals for him were certainly we wanted to engage him, mentally and physically, but also wanted to create, a bond with him. And we were having some difficulty with that. Digger was pretty shut down when we first got him, and I thought that it was really important for us to work on that together so that we could become a team, especially since he was blind, and we really needed to be a team. And I had no idea about the power and the life-altering experience that we would have with Digger, with his journey in nosework. So I'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later. And currently we are doing it with our newest pug, Mac, who Chris has now, what is his nickname you call him now?
Bullnoser.
The bullnoser. That's right. He does. He's pretty good at it too. So without further ado, let me give you a little bit of information about our guest today. Michele is as I said, a certified canine nosework instructor. She is the owner, founder, and training director at the Dog's Pace in Franklin, Massachusetts. Michele has been training dogs for 18 years, and although her focus has been on scent training, her background is in behavior modification. So this gives Michele a unique perspective on engaging with all kinds of dogs and dog personalities. And in 2009, Michele was among the first dog trainers in New England to become involved in the National Association of Canine Scent Work, the NACSW. And she was involved in this new and evolving sport of canine nosework. And she's been instrumental in establishing the foundation necessary to make the sport a success in this region. And she is currently an NACSW certifying official. And Michele has trained in a variety of dog sports, both personally and professionally, but her primary goals are in the sport of canine nosework. And this is my favorite part. Her fondness of the sport comes from the tremendous benefit offered to all dogs, including building confidence, bonding, mental stimulation, and pure enjoyment. Michele has also recently begun training diabetic alert dogs for service, which is fantastic. I can't wait to hear more about that. And she's able to utilize her skills as a training and scent work to help these dogs or train these dogs to become diabetic alert dogs. So please welcome Michele to the show. Welcome, Michele.
Yay, welcome, Michele.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to chat and about my favorite topic.
It's one of my favorite topics too, Michele. So why don't we jump right in, Michele, with talking about what is nosework or scent detection, and are those terms interchangeable? Is there any difference between those two terms?
So I think it really depends on who you ask. I mean, to me, they're interchangeable. Scent work, nosework, it depends on the organization that you're talking about, but overall, the idea that the dogs are accessing their nose and using their olfactory systems to solve problems and gain confidence, it doesn't matter what you call it. That's that's what they're doing. So canine nosework is a copyrighted term, I believe, for the NACSW, but nosework in general is not, and scent work. So you'll see people call, I think it's AKC scent work is what they use. It's the same.
And when did canine nosework become an organized sport? How long has that been?
Gosh, so I was thinking about this on my way here, actually. I did my first NACSW trial, my first test was in 2011. I started training it in 2009. I think the first ever trial was on the West Coast in 2009. So it's been organized maybe since 2007 or so.
Still
Relatively new.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely. And when you consider the growth of the sport, I mean, it's insane. There's hundreds of trials every weekend now, all across the country, and they're getting some national footing or international footing as well.
Yeah, it's even hard to get into a class sometimes because there's a waiting list even to get into classes. So what was it about this specific sport, Michele, that drew you to this, given that you had done other training and sporting events with your dogs? What was this that drew you out of that and into canine nosework?
Yeah, I have an affinity for activities that are geared to what the dogs are genetically inclined to do. Mm-hmm. So, you have a border collie and you do herding. I think that's cool. Like, I want to learn everything that I can learn from the dog about that sport. The cool thing about nose work or scent work is that literally every dog can do it. Like, it's something that's ingrained in them from their very, very beginning infancy, finding milk, they have to use that system. And then in the process of training good dogs, like good pet dog, right? Training them to walk politely, for example, we kind of teach them to turn off that system because it's not pleasant to walk a dog who's crisscrossing in front of you and sniffing and everything. So a lot of times we put a lot of pressure on the dogs kind of fitting into our world. So nose work allows us to fit into their world. And I think that's so cool that we can appreciate our dogs a little bit more from a little bit of a different angle with something that they're born doing. I just thought that was so cool.
Right.
Yeah. And the fact that you said that, we're trying to do something where we fit into our dog's world, because it does seem like 99.9% of the time we are trying to morph our dogs to fit into our world. So that's beautiful.
Yeah, that it's so true. I mean, behavior modification work that's the world that I came from. So that's a little bit more involved anyway, because you're helping the dog live a little bit more comfortably. At least that's the goal, with their, big feelings or whatever's going on. But yeah, any of that pet dog stuff is like, sit down, stay, don't do this, don't do that. It's fitting them into our world. And I just think I just think their world is so, almost underappreciated until you appreciate it, until you see what they can do. And oh my God, the first time your dog finds a head of a Q-tip in a classroom it's amazing.
Yeah. So let's elaborate on that. So how do you actually do nose work? How do you teach this? I've never done it. So, I'm happy to learn from you. And, what does this training look like when a person brings their dog to a nose work class?
So it depends. There are a couple ways that traditionally we go about it. And one of the ways is we imprint odor, teaching them the birch, clove, and anise are the 3 essential odors that we use. And that's what's put on the Q-tip, and that's what's hidden in a space. So one of the ways to train it is to imprint the odor, tell the dog that the odor is valuable, and then gradually start making the problems harder and harder. The other way is to get them to build their ability to hunt first and then introduce them to the odor after. And that's the way that I have had most success doing. I like to keep, this is going to get a little bit geeky, but I like to keep the dog, this is a classically conditioned sport. I like to keep the operant conditioning out of it as much as possible. So at no time do I ask the dog to do a thing for me, like a sit or a down or any kind of command that would involve me telling the dog what to do. Instead, I condition the dog to do it kind of on his own and then involve me in it eventually. So I start using what we call primary. Primary, very simply, is anything I don't have to tell the dog is valuable. So depending on the dog, it might be a piece of meatball, it might be a piece of sausage. For my Malinois, it's her tug toy. And I will teach them to hunt for that thing. and I will introduce them to as many different components of problem solving that I can think of. So the dog is searching independently. That's important. That's what builds the confidence. If the dog is independently problem solving without the aid or influence of the handler, that builds tremendous amount of confidence in the dog that he can get there. He can do it. He will be successful. He learns to unknit, complicated problems like 3 hides and 3 pieces of his sausage in a space, finding one, then the next one, then the next one. Call those converging odors. That's a valuable skill. So we teach them all the skills on primary because I'm not going to mess it up. Like me as the handler, I'm not going to interfere. There's nothing, the dog's not working for me at that point. He's working for whatever his primary is, his tug toy, his sausage, his meat, whatever he's got out there. He's working organically for that. So I am kind of faded into the distance a little bit in this process. And that's exactly where I want to be, because again, if we want to get the confidence building and all of that out of it and the independent problem solving, I need the dog to not worry about me. I need him to know that I'm there for him, I'm supporting him, but I can't do it for him. He's got to do it for himself. Once the dog is doing all of that, then we introduce him to birch, clove, and anise, and we teach them that those 3 things are valuable. We do that primarily through what we call pairing, which is putting his primary reinforcer, whatever that is, his meatball or his tug toy. We put that with the odor and pretty much just repeat the whole series that we just did. So we start with simple problems. He gets his reinforcer. The odor just happens to be with it at this point. So the dog learns to associate the odor with his primary thing. Once he's built that association quite significantly, we take away the primary thing and we treat him for finding the odor kind of on its own. The dog's always rewarded in this game, even in trial, the dog's rewarded, or you're given the opportunity to reward your dog. So we're able to keep that association of birch, clove, and anise means reinforcer pretty high.
So again, as somebody that doesn't know anything about this, you've thrown out birch, clove, and anise a lot.
I know.
And so, let's elaborate on that a little bit. Why are those scents used? And I mean, I'm just guessing here, birch as in a birch tree, and clove, of course, is like an herb or a plant. And I don't even know where anise comes from. Is that another?
Anise is like Good and Plenty's.
Yeah, I know the smell, but I don't know what the derivation is. Is that a plant? They're all plant-based smells, I guess.
It's so funny. It's so funny. That is like the why were these 3 odors picked is I get asked this question so many times. And, I've never gotten a straight answer about it.
We don't know.
That is the conundrum.
I don't know. I can assume that it's because they're, safe. And they're relatively easy to find. They didn't want to pick something that the organizers didn't want to pick something that was so obscure that nobody could get their hands on it.
Right.
It's the essential oil is what the Q-tips are scented with. So we take and it's ambient scenting. So we take a canning jar, fill it with Q-tip heads, drop maybe 5 or 6 drops of the odor in there, screw the cap on, give it a shake. The odor absorbs into the cotton. And then that's what we use to plant for our dogs.
Right. And I understand what you're saying about it. It's accessible in the sense that those essential oils are available, but yet those odors are novel in a dog's everyday environment for the most part.
For the most part, yes.
Yeah. So they're not getting maybe confused. I mean, if we used hot dogs all the time, then, when I'm making my Oscar Mayer, then the dog could think that it's doing its nose work when I'm really eating my lunch.
Right. Or if they use, I think AKC uses cedar oil as well, as one of there's another one that they use. I think it's cedar. I could be wrong on that. I don't do AKC that much. But there's some of the organizations throw in other things. Clove is probably the one that would be present in the dog's work. It's in a lot of air fresheners.
Can we go back when we were talking earlier too about like how, or you were mentioning how nose work, like any dog could do nose work. Let's talk a little bit about that. Nosework is open to all dogs. So we're talking, your border collies, your pugs, your Havanese, your Dalmatian. Do we see a variety of dogs in Nosework?
Yes, and that is the coolest part of it. Go to a Nosework trial, you'll get a Yorkie, one dog, and then the next dog you'll get some working line German Shepherd, and then you'll get the Lab, and then you'll get the cool mix like Hound Cattle Dog.
Right.
They just get all kinds of dogs. There actually used to be an award. They stopped doing it, and I'm not exactly clear why. I think they stopped during COVID, and I don't think it's coming back. But they used to have an award at the NW1 level called the Harry Award that was specifically given to a rescue dog that was competing in that trial that day. And just to kind of note, like, hey, you can see how much the dog loves it, or how beneficial it is for this dog, or how, I forget the terminology that they use. It's like that Nosework has enriched this dog's life.
He's got a job.
Yeah.
One of the things I like, I haven't competed with either one of my dogs, and maybe I don't know if I ever will, but can we talk just a little bit about what competition looks like? And the other thing I think we can touch on this a little bit later is, the camaraderie in this group is amazing. So even during competition, and I don't know that we see this in any other sport with dogs, people are rooting for you.
Yeah.
I know, it's great. I'm friends with all the people in my class. Yeah. But what I'd like to know is, what does a competition look like?
So it depends on the organization. I can speak to a couple of them because those are the ones that I participate in. NACSW is who I work for, obviously. So I know the most about that one. That is if you go for Nosework 1, 2, 3, NW, like elite level, any of those kind of, as you work up in the levels, they're all day affairs. So you get there in the morning, you set up your camp essentially at your car with your chair and your sunshade and whatever you need to keep
your
you
sandwich.
And your sandwich, exactly. Whatever you need to keep you and your dog comfortable. And the cool part about it is that everybody's doing it. So especially if the day's nice, like we just had a trial this last weekend and the weather was so nice and everybody was sitting out, at the back of their cars and we're chatting and, got to see people who you haven't seen in a long time. And you're absolutely right. Everybody there is rooting for each other. Right. We all want to do well ourselves, but it's also nice to see your classmates, your colleagues, whoever else is there do well. And most of the time you've trialed with them a couple of times and you've seen either things not go well, or, they've been working on something really hard. And it's extra rewarding to see that work for them in the end. We had a couple of those experiences this weekend. But yeah, you set up your stuff and, have your little camp. And then depending on the level would depend on how many searches there are that day. NW1 is 4 searches. So there would be 1 search in an interior space, 1 search in an exterior space, 1 search in a vehicle search, which is, we only search the outside of vehicles. So it kind of mimics what you might see like at a border crossing, like from police canines, where they wrap the vehicle asking the dog to look for, narcotics or something. We obviously are looking for a birch glue bananas Q-tip, but it's the same kind of style that we ask the dog to do. So you'll have one of those and then 1 container search, which is just, maybe 15 to 20 boxes, and they have to pick the one that has the Q-tips in it. The handler doesn't know where any of these hides are. So you and the dog are both going in kind of blind. And the dog's job is to identify where the thing is. The dog's job is to tell the handler where the thing is. The handler's job is to trust their dog and to tell the judge where they think it is. So that kind of goes along. The judge gives you a yes or a no. And then as you get up in the levels, things get a little more complex. There are more searches, multiple hides in each search. They do, they put like food distractors in some of the container boxes in the upper level. So the dog has to, leave the garlic bread and alert on the birch. But again, as a handler, you don't know that that's out there.
Yeah. My dog passed up a breakfast burrito once for Birch, which I could not believe. I was like, what? And it just kind of shows you really that the reward is important, but the hunt, I think, is it seems to like that's more important. So you're going to get your reward, but the hunt is more important, because I passed up a breakfast burrito to find Bert.
Yeah, and it's a direct relationship to what the reward event is at source. It's more than just the cookie, right? It's the reward event. So how are you appreciating your dog? What does the event look like? 1 cookie, 2 cookie, 3 cookie, lots of praise, some patting, all of that factors into the dog's enjoyment and enthusiasm to find the thing. The more impactful that event is, the more successful the dog will be at leaving other things.
Yeah. I just want to emphasize, though, that, going back to this can be for every dog, and, it doesn't have to be complicated, nor does it have to lead to trials and competition. I remember I was reticent to start my dogs in agility because I thought, oh gosh, there's going to be all this pressure. And, I just have, pet cavaliers, and, they're not really known for agility. And so I didn't want to do it. But once I started, then, I really could see the benefits for all of us involved. And I think that's what's so beautiful about Nosework is that, you can do it as much or as little as you want. You can, go to classes. You don't ever have to compete, and you can do these things within your own home, right?
You don't even have to put them on odor. To get the benefit out of this game, your dog could search for his sausage forever.
Uh-huh.
And he's still going to build the confidence. He's still going to get the mental, what word am I looking for? The mental workout.
Stimulation, yeah.
Thank you. The mental stimulation from that event. It's all of that. The odor is secondary. Like, that's not what gives you the benefit of this activity. The benefit of this activity really comes from the dog being successful, being challenged slightly, being able to overcome little obstacles. Like, say he can't get directly to the hide. He's looking at it, but he can't get directly there because there's something in his way. Can he figure out a way around that? Those are the problems that once they figure out how to solve them, they become really proud of themselves that they've done it. But you can do all of that with your pieces of meatball in your living room. It doesn't need to be big and elaborate. Now, I will say that once you see your dog doing cool things for meatballs, sometimes the curiosity starts to build as to, gee, what could my dog do?
Like, my dog's really good at this.
Hey, my dog's really good at finding meatballs. And essentially, we just make odor mean meatballs. Mm-hmm. We just transfer that. That's how we, tell a dog the odor is important. They smell the odor, they get a meatball. Smell the odor, get a meatball. Over and over and over again.
And when you talked about the mental stimulation for these dogs, like when I go to class with Mac, he'll have 3, maybe 4 runs, depending on what the class structure is that day. Mm-hmm. And mentally, I'm surprised at how much it is for him. Mm-hmm. He's I don't know what the word is. I guess the problem solving and the power of his brain to, that power that you have to engage in your brain to track and hunt odor. But it's significant for him. He'll come home for about 10 minutes and run around like crazy. And then that's it for the rest of the afternoon. But he would prefer that over anything else.
Yeah. And that's, I have working line dogs. So my experience is a little bit different, only because they require a lot more. They need to do a lot more stuff to be happy and to be livable. But my year-old Malinois, if she needs some sort of mental stimulation every single day. Yeah. But I can say that if I can get out maybe 2 searches, that takes the edge off. Mm. Like that's done for the day, which how easy is that?
Right. And it's fun.
Yeah.
And I think this is something that Kathy and I always try to emphasize in the line of work that we do as far as being physical rehabbers. Many people, I just had a new client this past weekend that dog has a knee injury, And, both the owners are like, man, he needs at least 2 hours of exercise. He needs to be off leash in the woods. He needs to run and chase. And this is contraindicated in terms of, protecting his knee joint from further injury. And they're trying to avoid surgery and so forth. And my line is always that mental stimulation and training will trump physical exercise almost 100% of the time. I mean, I think that people are shocked at how little mental stimulation and brain games will tire them out, versus the hours that it may take to tire them out physically.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah. Yep. And I can't, we have, basic obedience classes come through, and every now and again, there will be a particular dog who you can just tell needs a little bit more. Like they're not, and the poor owners we walk him for 2 hours every day. And I don't know what else we can do. And he's never satisfied, and he's getting into trouble and causing mischief and getting into the trash and doing all this. And the minute, you show them this simple game, I start with just open like Amazon boxes in a pile, and I hide the meatballs throughout the pile of boxes. And once you show them that, it's like a relief for them that they have this thing that they can now do with their dog that doesn't take a whole lot of time.
Right.
That gets them the end result of having this, at least content creature to live with.
Life changing for everyone, because we're always strapped for time, but we want to, do right by our dogs. So how can we make that, the most efficient and effective?
Right.
And, this is certainly a means to an end.
Yes.
So let's circle back a little bit to like professional dogs. I happen to be reading a book right now that I picked up at one of those little free libraries when I was walking my dog in the neighborhood. And it chronicles the journey of a Marine who was one of the first dog handlers in the United States to use the dog for searching out specifically IEDs in Iraq. So I didn't know until I started reading this book that military dogs were not used for this purpose until the Iraq War, and then subsequently in Afghanistan. So it's a fascinating read, about their relationship, the bonding, and how this was a sole Marine, and he's immersed with a bunch of Army guys, soldiers. And at first they're a little distrusting, right? They don't want the dog to go first. And, is this dog really going to keep us safe? Is he going to be able to, find this bomb? And before long, this dog proves herself, and, they're all, Team Canine. So talk a little bit about how we use nose work, scent work professionally in, we've touched on police, military work, but also, in medical situations, search and rescue. We're on the heels of the 20th anniversary of 9/11. And we know how many dog teams were sent to the disaster site, and unfortunately didn't find anything. But talk about that a little bit, and then how that emotionally can affect the dog or dog handler team.
Yeah, okay. That's a big
wow.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess we're talking about like, classes and training and so forth, but I also want our audience to appreciate that there are people spending, countless hours, months, years training dogs because they have this literally superhuman ability to smell, and how we're utilizing them in different facets, which I've alluded to. But maybe, Michele, you can talk a little bit about you're recently training dogs to help with diabetes, right?
Yes. Yeah. So I know the dogs are amazing. And I think that we're discovering every single day just a little bit more about how amazing their ability to sort out odors is, and how minute those odors could possibly be for the dog to still pick them up and still identify them as, to the dog, it's valuable, right? Because every time the dog finds something that they've been trained for, they get a reinforcer of some sort. I think that there was an increase. I know more about private sector stuff than military, only because that's who, like my colleagues work in private sector now, and are not currently working with the military. But from my understanding, it's, instead of putting the dogs on birch clove or anise, they're putting the dogs on pieces of explosives. So different components of an IUD is what the dog would be trained on. And then he would alert on those particular things. They're using dogs more and more for a variety of reasons, but one of them is how reliable they can be. And, my work, the diabetic alert stuff, is eternally fascinating to me. And I wish I had more time to do more of it, because I love it. But essentially, with diabetic alert dogs, the dogs are alerting on the ketones in the body that change with blood sugar changes. So we train them on, my favorite is saliva, just because it's more clean than any other place we could get odor from. But there's an odor that's emitted when blood sugars start to change, either drop or raise. And we train the dogs to identify the movement of that odor. And then we train them to do something when they detect it. So we train them they notice the movement in the odor and they nudge their handler. They'll nose poke them until they pay attention. Sometimes we train them to go get the testing kit. They notice the blood sugar change, or the ketone change in the odor, and they'll go and they'll retrieve their handler's blood testing kit to insist that they do it right then.
Wow.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, it's fascinating that they can do that. Like that's something that it takes a really keen dog. Not all dogs. So I need to say this to you. Not all dogs can or should be service dogs.
Right.
And that's a conversation that I have more often than not, because your, lovely companion dog may not be suited for that work. Mm-hmm. And that's important. It's important that the work, even the military work, all that, like these dogs are specifically selected, not because of their ability to scent, but because their personality type. Right. So with a diabetic alert dog, I need a dog to pick up on the odor movement. I need him to alert to the handler, and I need him to not dismiss it when the handler doesn't listen. Because a lot of times with our diabetic clients, when their blood sugars start to drop, their cognitive functions also drop. So they're not always completely there. So the dog needs to have the tenacity to kind of nudge, really push, if they're not being recognized. So that's what I mean. Like my shepherd would not be a very good service dog in that capacity. Mm-hmm. He would crumble if I told him to go away. Mm. So, when we look for dogs for service work in any capacity, we have to look at the genetics of that dog and the overall temperament of that dog. They're amazing, and all dogs can do it, but the temperament to be tenacious about it differs.
Well, and I think that's why, some of these professionals are able to go into rescue settings, and shelters and such, yes, and select a dog to train up because they're recognizing that temperament that you're describing, Michele.
It is yes, absolutely. I have a colleague who works ecological detection in California, and that's what she does. She visits shelters all the time, and pretty much takes a tennis ball and walks up and down the kennels and bounces the tennis ball And the dog who's, essentially throwing himself off the chain link to get to the tennis ball is the one that she takes.
And you just said ecological?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
So she has a number of dogs who are trained on a variety of things, and it depends. They're either endangered species or invasive species. So and in California, they have, I think most of her work is in like they have huge windmill fields, like windmills, and they're just fields and fields of them. So when they're going to put up a new one or a new solar field or something like that, they have to make sure there's no endangered species in that area. So they send out the dogs.
Yeah. For green energy. I think I saw something on a program recently where a dog was used to sniff out like a fungus or something like that was actually below ground and was spreading, but it wasn't easily visible to the human eye and to know where it was going and tracking and like you said, things that could be invasive or detrimental to our environment as well.
Yeah. So I think at this point she works on government what's it called? Contracts. So they'll send her out to clear an area of whatever. She trains the dog on the thing because there's a variety of different things that they need. So she'll train the dog on the thing, get the dog certified, and then go out and clear vast areas of this thing much more efficiently than a group of scientists walking out with their eyeballs peeled for, kit fox scat or something.
Right. And
there are dogs who are doing whale pod tracking off of the bow of boats, and they sent out the whale scat and they track the pods that way.
Wow.
Can you imagine how many converging odors must be going through their nose at any given time, and they're able to just pick out this one specific smell? Is amazing. It's amazing.
Well, we do that. So every time you feed your dog for birch clover anise, you're conditioning those scent receptors to pay attention to that.
Yeah.
As opposed to everything else in the ambient environment.
Yeah. And how do you cut that out? I can't even imagine what it'd be like to live your life through an olfactory versus, how humans are through vision.
Yeah.
It must be, it's going to be amazing.
So Kathy knows this about me, Michele. I love a good statistic.
She does.
So I'm going to rattle off some things here to just kind of reinforce exactly what we're talking about. So, again, on the medical side, other things that I know dogs can detect are when a seizure may be imminent.
Yes.
Cancer cells, oftentimes well before any medical test shows that there's cancer present. And I forget like how many feet below ground or underwater, dogs can smell for a specific odor. I mean, it's uncanny, but this is why they're so amazing. So the dog's sense of smell is up to 100,000 times greater than our human ability. And our puny little 5 million scent receptors in the nose is compared to dogs that have 300 million. Dogs also have around 40% more of their brain devoted to the sense of smell than humans do. And they have an area of the brain that's devoted to assimilating scent, and it's called the olfactory bulbs. And these are 4 times larger than in the human brain. So it stands to reason that dogs are believed to smell up to 100 times better than humans. I think that's just incredible.
That's a lot of nose power.
Yes. And I have a poor sense of smell, so I'm sure that dogs can probably smell 200 times better than I can.
They also have a little organ on the roof of their mouth called the vomeronasal organ.
Yes.
Or the Jacobson's organ. And that also helps them process smell. So they can take in, if you ever seen your dog, or you see this with cats sometimes, they'll take in a scent and then you'll see them standing there with their mouth open.
Yep.
And they're just letting that hit that roof of their mouth. And I think it specifically helps them with detecting pheromones, but it enhances their ability.
One of the ways that working dogs, military police dogs are imprinted with odor is through a retrieval system. So you take I did it with my Malinois, you take a towel or something, put the odor in the middle of the towel, wrap the towel, tape the towel at the ends, and let the dog like chase, tug, carry, because the Jacobson gland is right at the like roof of the mouth, at the back of the mouth right there. So when they carry that thing in their mouth, they're taking in all of that odor because it's right there. That's one of the ways that it differs between the way that we do police military work versus canine nose work.
Can we circle back a little bit about the benefits of canine nose work? Because I'm always interested in the emotional lives of animals, and given the experience I had with Digger, the benefits were they were amazing, and I never experienced something I think that was so powerful for him in his life to change the way to make his life better. Basically, his quality of life was extremely enhanced by doing nose work. And like I said, we were building on his confidence and building on his, building on our bonding and building on our teamwork. But now, there were other things that happened that I started to notice that I think were because of this foundation of nose work, that his vet visits were going better. He was more compliant with vet visits. He was better with his training, more compliant with his training. He also now became a dog, a blind dog who now liked new adventures. And so the confidence was just, it was outstanding. And I oftentimes recommend it for a lot of other clients I have that have blind dogs as well, because of the outcome that I had with my dog. And it was a pure, joy for me to watch him come out and evolve and be the guy who he really was, or be the guy that he could be, and have this fantastic, existence without vision.
Yeah.
So what are other benefits? I probably talked about just 3 right there, but
yeah,
I think I just covered them all. But maybe you can tell us a story that's happened to you with the client's dog. Maybe there's something that you can see that this dog developed from one personality or one way of being to being a confident, outgoing, well-behaved dog. Have you seen that?
One that sticks in my mind is it was a golden retriever client, and she was older, had pretty much, to my assumption, lived the majority of her days not being comfortable away from home. Like she was really anxious in any other environment that was not home. So her owner had done nose work with her other dog because she was more outgoing and more confident, and she had fun with her. And she asked me if we could try it with Allie, this dog. I was like, yeah, sure. You just have to be patient. You just can't push it. And she didn't. And Allie went from not being able to move in the building, because she came here for lessons. She went from not being able to move in the building to doing full searches in the building, the vehicles, in exteriors, everything. She's still aware. She's very aware of her environment. Yeah. But you can see her consciously make decisions to say, I'm not going to die. I'm not going to die. Yep. I'm not going to die. And she does it. And when she gets there to the end, she's so proud of herself.
I'd be proud of her too.
Like she's not terribly food motivated either. So that's another challenge, but the cookie is the side note. The fact that she did it, it's
impressive, right?
It means more to her. Yeah. And that's, if people are willing to have the patience, their dogs can really go far. Then this dog is not, she's never going to compete. That was never the goal. The goal was just, can we get her to a place where she didn't feel so stifled when she had to go to the vet's office, when she had to go to the groomer, when she had to go on a walk around her neighborhood. Like, these are not things that she could do before.
Right. And Chris and I, almost every podcast, we talk about dogs and their confidence, and why we should be concerned with our dog's confidence. And we'll say it probably in almost every episode. It's a quality of life issue. I don't want this dog to be frightened to leave the home. I want her to be able to go to the groomer. I want her to have some confidence. And so I mean, really, you've increased this dog's quality of life, as you know, Digger had an increase in quality of life with Nosework as well. So that's a fantastic end goal.
Yeah.
Expanded their world so much.
Right. And I have to say, you know, I in our experience with Digger, I would have to, you know, give a lot of kudos to his Nosework trainer, because she gave him every opportunity to engage, just like all the other dogs that were in class. And if you saw the class, you'd probably laugh a little bit, because it was like, you know, German Shepherd, Beagle, you know, chubby, blind pug, sorry. But he was given the same opportunities and the same amount of time and the same amount of patience that every other dog was, even though we knew he wasn't going to compete. But it was important enough for his instructor to give him the same amount of energy and time that she gave to every other dog. So he was out there doing dog stuff, you know, because he's a dog, not a blind dog, just a dog doing dog stuff. And to see him work without vision is incredible. And sometimes he'd come off the course and he'd give like high fives, because he was that's the kind of dog he was, like high fives. But his, you know, when people cheered for him, it was like fuel. He just loved it. He loved it.
Well, and I think you've both shared stories, you know, you with Digger, Kathy, and Michele with the older Golden, where through Nosework, it has carried over to many aspects of these dogs' lives.
Right.
It's not just, you know, when they are in that Nosework environment, you know, you've kind of changed their mindset, right?
Right.
And that's kind of a good segue to another thing that we talk about many times, Michele, is Kathy and I recommend nose type games to a lot of our clients for their dogs, because maybe they are older. Maybe they are physically impacted, differently abled in some way. You know, the dog may be in a wheelchair. The dog may be missing a limb. The dog may be severely arthritic, but they can still do Nosework. It's low impact, and just as we said, for all of those reasons, so beneficial.
Oh, and it encourages movement too. So for us as rehabbers, we're like, if you have a dog that's sniffing, reaching, stabilizing, you know, all of those things are
Turning.
Encouraging movement. Exactly. They're encouraging movement. And so that's what we're, you know, we're all about the movement. You know, we all have a mutual friend, and her dog is in a wheelchair, and she'll do some Nosework stuff with her dog in the yard, and she loves it. And being in a wheelchair really hasn't made it not possible for her to do sniffing. She can still sniff, you know. She needs a mobility aid, but she's still a good Nosework dog.
Is there anything else in closing, Michele, that you would like to share, leave our audience with, in terms of, you know, a pearl of information, a plug for Nosework, another success story? Lay it on us.
I just think, in my very humble opinion, that everybody should do Nosework with their dogs. I just think it's as vital as your neighborhood walk at the end of the day, or whatever routine you do with your dog to make sure they get their physical exercise. I think they also need to do something with their brains.
So let me ask you this. You know, I'm from Iowa, and, you know, sometimes I describe the quote crazy work that I'm doing. And, you know, people just don't, they may have a different mentality around their pets, or don't even understand or have access to the things that are potentially available to dogs. You know, we're very privileged here in New England to have, you know, different kinds of dog sports and training centers and so forth. So, you know, for my mom back in Iowa, how could she do Nosework, you know, for her dog? Could it simply be even scattering treats out in the yard and make him forage for treats? Is that a form of Nosework, in the sense they're using their sense of smell to find those treats and getting reward for that?
Absolutely. One of my favorite enriching enrichment activities for my dogs when it's wintertime and there's snow all over the place and I can't swim them or hike them or do anything like that, is to take a handful of kibble and chuck it into the snow and let them bury themselves until they find all the pieces. That's incredibly enriching mentally for them.
Yeah.
And I like the putting a treat or their kibble, as you say, in a blanket. You kind of mentioned something to that effect in training earlier, but letting them dig for it and find, try to find it and problem solve and get that treat. I think a lot of the enrichment toys are scent driven. They're trying to get the treat from under the flap or spin the object to find whatever it is. So don't be a naysayer, I guess, out there. I think it's something that anybody can do, and you just have to be creative, and it becomes nose work and enriching.
Right.
No, you have a dog who loves his ball. Put him in. I do this with my Malinois all the time. I'll put her in the kitchen, go out on the deck, chuck her ball somewhere, wait a couple minutes, release her to go find it. She has to hunt for her ball through the yard.
Mm. That's a good point too, that it doesn't always have to be food, because our last show that we published, or a recent show that we published, was on pet obesity. And so it can be that toy. You have to figure out what works for your pet. Oh, and that makes me think of another thing, Michele. You said like the dog signals. Can you describe what some of those signals look like? I meant to touch on that earlier, but how do we know when they found the scent?
Yeah. So we call them trained indicators, which could be any behavior that you tell the dog you want when they found the thing, like a sit or a down or a nose touch on target or a look back at me. I like more natural indicators because they're more honest and they're less operant. And I've already talked about how I like to stay away from the operant world in this. So for my dog, he finds it's so valuable to him, and he's so ingrained with this expectation that I'm going to come feed him for it, that he plants himself and he will not leave it until I come feed him or release him from it. So that's what I like to condition, is the dog kind of owning the hide. I call it possession. And the handler just learns to read that. It generally looks like a look back if you didn't know what you were looking for.
So just like the reward could be food, or it could be a toy, a ball, a sock. Also, this alert, this signal, can look different for different dogs, and it's up to us, to one of your original points, to kind of figure out and immerse ourselves in the dog's world as to what that is, and then recognize that and reinforce it.
Exactly.
Different for different dogs. Oh, fascinating, right, Kathy?
I know. And I'm like super pumped because I got Nosework class tonight. Now I'm like super pumped for Nosework class tonight. So thank you, Michele. I agree. I think that everybody should try some type of Nosework, scent detection, foraging, hunting games with their dogs. It's fantastic for mental stimulation and physical stimulation. So thank you for sharing all that with us today. Really enjoyed listening to what you had to say about it.
Absolutely. Thank you for inviting me.
Michele, before you go, can you tell our audience where can they find you?
Yes. So they can find us online. We're at thedogspace.net. And all of our information's there. There's a nice blurb about what Nosework is in case you wanted to look into that a little bit more, and some other resources.
Fantastic.
Wonderful. Thank you. We'll put that in our show notes so people can find you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Very good. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoyed our show. Follow us on Facebook or on Instagram at PetAbility Podcast.
For more information about Kathy's books and living with blind dogs, please go to enableyourpet.com. Thank you, and please tune in next time.